Welcome to the new cyber frontier, bringing you the latest news and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. You can find us on the web at www.NewCyberFrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
Welcome to today's episode of New Cyber Frontier. On today, an interesting show, which I'm going to be looking forward to as well. Something that we all kind of run into, and we'll talk about the topic in a minute. But today, introducing the guest, Aviv Grafi, is the CTO and founder of Votiro. And Aviv, interesting thing that you're doing there. But, first of all, we like to get up front and personal with our guest and know what it is that drives you. How do you get to where you're at? How do you get to be a CTO of a startup? There's got to be an interesting story there. So talk about yourself a little bit and tell me what your journey's been like.
Yeah, great. So first, Chris, thank you very much for inviting me to the show. And of course, I'll be happy to share with you my background. First, I'm based in Tel Aviv, Israel. And one of the things that in terms of my background, I was serving in the intelligence forces here, and I was doing defense and offense operations for a few years. And then I started work for a couple of startups. Then I started what's now being called Votiro. Back then, I wasn't really sure what I want to do, but I knew that I want to solve a problem. And during the first 2 years, I was doing services, audit services, penetration testing services for a lot of companies in the world. And I was traveling in the world. It was a pretty fun job for 20-something years old, actually. And I was interviewing the IT staff and asking questions. And after 3 or 4 or 5 days of that audit period, I was usually able to demonstrate to them how I could hack them. And I found that there is one technique that actually been working for me time after time. And that technique was pretty simple. It was just logging to the client website and checking the open positions posting and saying, okay, so let's apply for that position. And in the finance department and say, hey, I want to apply to that position. My name is Chris, and this is my resume. And by the way, I know Aviv from the marketing team. And on the other side, there's always a guy or a lady that need to screen hundreds of resumes per week in order to do the job. And they cannot think twice before they open, resumes. So they were just opening a weaponized document that I was sharing with them. And it was just working 100% of the times. And at that time, I was asking myself, okay, how can it be that 20 or 30 years after that, problem of weaponized documents, being introduced, how we still in the same place, in the same position? And I think that's what actually drove me to understand that I want to solve a big problem. And that's what led to what is today called Votiro.
We hear so often that we start out hacking, we find something that's effective for us, and we offer a solution for that problem, and it seems to work. Because if you can do it, everybody has it. Weaponized documents. We hear about this so often. We hear about don't open a PDF unless you have an update. Don't open. How many? And we hear in the news different types of documents. How many different types of documents can be weaponized?
So actually, most of us really think about probably the Excel spreadsheets or the Word documents that are out there, and in some way that's correct. I mean, even last week, Microsoft released a CV or a patch for a pretty serious vulnerability in Microsoft Word and Microsoft Office Suite. So this is one aspect, but not a lot of us know that even images files can be weaponized. There was a series of vulnerabilities in GIF formats and PNG formats, even in the iPhone parsers that can be triggered just by sending someone an image on the iMessage. So I can say that almost every file format can be weaponized. As it's more complex, and actually there's a higher chance that it can be weaponized. If you think about PDF documents, which we all been said check, read a PDF, make sure that you know the sender and all that kind of stuff, because PDF format is highly complex format. It's like 20, 30 something years old format, which very complex. And this is a great opportunity for the bad guys to really leverage that. So I can say that probably there are hundreds of file formats out there, and I would say that almost all of them can be weaponized.
All right. Let's take a break here from our sponsors. We'll be right back in a minute.
Blockframe technology offers next-generation blockchain managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, talking to Aviv Grafi, the CTO of Votiro. And before the break, we talked about weaponized documents. That kind of gets scary. Almost every document can be weaponized, but we don't hear about that too often. So tell us what that is. Explain kind of the process of weaponizing a document and how that works, in case somebody might not be familiar with what that is.
So I can say that for some of us, they know that Word documents and Excel spreadsheets, like I mentioned, can be weaponized. They can be either weaponized by a malicious macro, right? We all heard about macros that are very dangerous, and most of the apps are warning us, do not open those. But there's some other format that can be weaponized, like PDF and images, and even zip files can be weaponized. And what we see on the last few years, that it used to be kind of a decent problem, but on the last few years, it's actually getting bigger and bigger. And thanks to the COVID, a lot of companies actually went digital even more. So we're all exchanging documents even more than what we did in 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So documents actually are the lifeblood of every organization today. And even I'm exchanging documents with my families, right? So the problem is that someone would send in a document and say, hey, Chris, this is for our show today. I just want to give you some rundown. Just read that document before our show. And you need, you want to be an excellent professional. So you want to open and get ready and get prepared for everything. So it's pretty easy to lure us to open document, because it's something easy that, our kids doing, like, without even thinking. So I think the problem is getting even bigger than what it was in the past.
So if I say I want to be as safe as possible just right now, what would you recommend? Do I download the file, save it, or just never open anything from somebody I don't know? Download it, run a virus scanner on it before I open it. What's the immediate? How can I be just vigilant?
So, in order to answer that, let's go back in time and talk about the existing solution and where it's all started. So some of us remember the antiviruses from 10, 15 years ago. They were mostly signature based. For those the audience that they're not sure what signature based is, it's just, as long as I know that it looks like a bad file and I've recorded that in the past, I can detect that in the future. But the bad guys, 7, 10 years ago, they understood that they can generate a lot of flavors of the same bad document. So signatures, as the old AV, are not working for quite some time. And then, how we can cope with that? Let's create an internet-based, back then, signature updates. So we can update our signature every 5 minutes. But then the bad guys became even faster than that, and it's no longer work. And then we said, okay, let's think about something else. Maybe let's detonate that file. Let's take that document and run it in the sandbox. So for those of you who remember the days of the sandbox, that we would run that file in a container, and we'll see whether it does something malicious. Maybe it has some malicious behavior. but sandbox is as good as the signature of the behaviors that we can record. So the bad guys know how to bypass those by just, for example, let's wait for 10 hours before really executing the bad stuff. And no sandbox will hold that for 10 hours because the user want to have their file, right? So sandboxes were nice, but not an effective solution. Then the next-gen AVs and EDR came to the world. And we said, okay, let's train a machine learning model that would catch the next variant of a malware. But machine learning model is as good as the data set that you're feeding and you're training that model with.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we taking a history and then we're trying to predict the future. But the bad guys are inventing new and innovative techniques to exploit, like the one that Microsoft published last week. So if I can summarize all those techniques, the detection technologies out there, they all rely on one thing. Let's take the history and try to predict the future. And if I had the future prediction capabilities, probably I would be, very rich and I would be in the security business. So we all know that it's almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is where the problem, at. And when those technologies has failed, we told our users, okay, you would spot the phishing. And I'm sure, Chris, that you saw a lot of campaigns, right? That spot the phishing kind of, campaigns in organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all those things are because the technology has failed. And I think that in order to solve that, there are two things that need to be done. One is to have more proactive approaches. And the second is to really understand the controls that we need to put on the pipes where we get documents, and not neglect some new pipes that, of course, coming out every day, like Slack and some others.
But then if I go back to my question, what can I do right now? Is it just don't open those files if I don't know the people?
So obviously, if you don't know the guy, the sender, and you're not expecting a document, that's easy. So I would tell you, yeah, that's easy. Do not open it. There's some other techniques to deal with that. So, for example, one proactive approach would be having new technologies like content disarm and reconstruction, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind content disarm and reconstruction technologies like CDR is that you don't have to know what is malicious in the file. For example, that you want to have that rundown document for the show. You want to have the content, not necessarily the bits. So if I would tell you that I would take that document and regenerate a safe copy of that, which looks and feels exactly the same, and deliver that to you, that would probably be sufficient for you to be productive and eliminating a lot of the risk in those documents. So this is one thing that we can do today.
So okay, so that, and we'll talk about that. I know that's where you guys' approach is, that CDR, content disarm and reconstruction. But I'm just still curious about this question of what do I do right now? So I know when I open an Excel spreadsheet, Microsoft pops up with that little warning that says, "Hey, there might be harmful content in here." Is the harm already done before it gives me that warning, or is that going to be kind of adequate to know, hey, don't say yes to that one, or just should I never open an Excel spreadsheet? I mean, and there's just times when you like want this, and I'm trying to find a safe way. Should I have another computer that I can open it on, or should I save it to my hard drive, run a scan on it? What's the thoughts right now before we get to the CDR?
So I think in order to reduce the likelihood of this document to execute something on your computer, first, the pop-up actually warns you before launching some advanced features of Excel spreadsheet that might hurt. I mean, that the bad guy might leverage, for example, VBA macros. Okay. One approach would be open those documents in a web view. For example, in Google Drive, they have the web view, Dropbox. So it's kind of limited. It's kind of a preview of the document, right?
That's cool. So, but it's a little bit of extra work but it's something
Right.
we can do to help ourselves right now. If we get something, we feel like we'd like to see it, but we're not quite sure. Push it up to Google and open it through Google. It might be a good way to do that.
I would say either Google, Dropbox, or any kind of website that can render that document. It won't give you the full kind of user experience, which is the problem with
Gotcha.
that approach. But at least
So
it will
you're
give you the preview that would you have
good.
the
So
sense,
you're
okay,
open
this
it in
is a
like
document I'm really interested
Office.
in. Yeah,
So you're open it in like Office 365 from a web location, and that way our computer, we could come kind of do some self help and keep some relevance protection away from that, right?
that's right. That's right.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know what your thoughts were for how I can minimize that. Now, and it's interesting that it's been so long that we've been hearing about this, and solutions like CDR are just kind of the term. I never heard the term before you brought it up, and I keep abreast to what's going on in the industry. So, but talk about that. What's the steps in what you're doing? Tear it down, find what's good, put it back together. I think that's the basis of it. But explain that technology and that feature for those of us that might want to hear about, this new kind of emerging process coming down the pipe. But first of all, we're going to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back to answer that question.
Blockframe technology offers next-generation blockchain-managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, talking to Aviv Grafi, the CTO of Votiro. And before the break, we talked about defining CDR, content disarm and reconstruction, to help prevent from weaponized document and content that we receive as attachments from the web, from wherever, opening them on our machines, and what that does when it executes a little bit of code in a document, gets into our computer and does some kind of a malware. So explain the process that CDR goes through, Aviv.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before the break, most of the traditional solutions were trying to detect the bad stuff in the document, right? We know it doesn't work anymore. So the idea behind CDR is, instead of looking for bad parts of the document and then determine whether it's bad or not and block it, which is a different problem that we can talk about, we want to know what are the good parts in that document. For example, if I'm sending someone a deck or a presentation, he's interested in the text, in the images, in the what's actually being presented. So by taking all those good content, good parts of the document, and pasting that or replicating that on a safe template of that PowerPoint presentation, we can deliver a document that is fully functional, looks and feels exactly the same, but practically the vulnerable bits, what was in the original document that may be malicious, actually being thrown out because it's not being delivered. So if you go back to my advice of what you can do today, for example, that preview option, kind of, uploading that to a web view of Office or Google or Dropbox, the disadvantage of that approach is that you don't have the full user experience. You cannot really work with the document as you would work with, as you're working with your PDF reader or your Office suite. We're actually providing something that is very, similar to that preview, but with actual full featured document. So we're taking, for example, an Excel spreadsheet, taking all the formulas, charts, bookmarks, links, everything, and then we replicate that to a safe version of the document and delivering that immediately. It's being done in milliseconds because we don't need to run the file somewhere. We're just doing the deterministic process to take the good content. We call it the positive selection. We're not trying to, we're actually selecting only the positive parts, not trying to select the negative parts. We're selecting only the positive parts, moving them to a brand new template of the document, and then delivering that immediately So in fact, we're telling our customers, and actually I'm telling our employees, open any document that you're receiving by email, via Slack, via Dropbox. Open any document and do not think twice. You don't need to ask yourself whether I know the sender. Just open it, because it's just a safe replica of whatever being sent to you.
That is interesting. And I know that there was several types of sandboxes, like you said earlier, and document scanners. You always see this scanning your document. My virus scanner says, we're scanning your document, we're downloading it, protecting your content. Let me scan your storage drive all the time, pops up, and you start this process of it going through and everything. Pulling it apart, putting it back together safely. I just let me play some devil's advocate. One, I assume that you have to do this for every file type and support them one at a time. So there would be a list of, hey, this process supports these file types and we're working on these coming in the future type of thing, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, Votiro, in Votiro, we have the file format experts. The nice part about that we need to do that, as opposed to the traditional solutions, the traditional solution need to chase the bad guys. This is endless. You need to chase every technique of exploitation in the world. With the CDR approach, you need to do the Excel spreadsheet format once. You need to support it once, and that's it. You need to do it for the Word document once, and that's it. Same for PDF, for images, for GIF, for PNGs, for archives like zip files and RAR files. You need that. We even do that for planning files like AutoCAD. Okay, so we support around 150 file types, but to be honest, that's probably 99% of the files that being used, in business today. If you think about it, if you need to list the file types that you actually, sending and receiving, you would end up with less than 10, probably.
So the thoughts are, let's, if it's a file type we don't know, let's block it, which is kind of a good thing anyway, I think, if you ask me. And just say we replaced that file or we blocked that file. Here's what it was called. If you really want it, might be somewhere in some sandbox. We quarantined it or whatever.
Yes, of course, for that, tail that we don't support, of course, you can have a decision whether you want to block it or allow it. That depends on the, policy. In general, our approach is that we want to enable the business and not block the business. If you think about a lot of the solutions, as a lot of the security solutions, they are restrictive security type solutions. They want to block stuff. You immediately receive a message pop up. Okay, this was blocked. Call your IT to have that document. We're telling the opposite. We telling, IT teams, you need to be, business enablers, not, blockers.
Yeah.
So that's why we think that if you can have a proactive and business enabler technology. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's the thing that's going to come up, and I can imagine you priority fight with this is, what types of things are stripped out? What functionality are we're never going to get transferred through this type of reconstruction process because we don't know what it could be. And what parts of my presentations not going to have animation, or my spreadsheets not going to have some of the advanced calculations? There's just always going to be pieces that we say, yeah, those are just stripped out all the time. Now we learn to do business without them, or what's your kind of limiting pieces there?
So that's a great question. In fact, when we started the CDR, when we invented the CDR, the first generation of the CDR, we actually remember that like a Xerox machine. We just like kind of print a document and then scan it, so you would get a flat document. Unfortunately, some of the the players in that market are still doing that, but this was the first generation. It was very nice in terms of security, but productivity was close to zero. The second generation of the CDR was stripping out some features, for example, macros. Because if you strip all the macros from documents, from any documents coming in, it will be pretty safe, right? But then a lot of financial, departments in a lot of industries, they're still using macros for the day-to-day. They're still receiving and sending macros. So for the second generation of the CDR, it was okay. Then we invented the third generation, which is the positive selection, which we took us years to develop to make sure that all features in the documents are being actually replicated to the safe version of the document, including the macros. In fact, we applied an AI machine learning model for macros, and we understood how a good macro, how a benign macro should look like, and then we know how to actually replicate that macro into the new format. So basically, it took us several years to develop that technology and mature it to get to the point where there's almost no feature in the file and content suite that actually you would see as missing. Obviously, there are some edge cases, some here and there, but for until today, we processed more than 10 billion documents, and that's what makes us actually help us to really fine tune that. Yeah.
Interesting. And I know that that security versus productivity we had talked about is always the thing. And you're, on the business enablement side of that dilemma where, most security is just block it. We can't tell you how to get things done. We can only tell you what you can't do.
That's right. We see that challenge. I've seen that challenge for the last 15, 20 years, where some of the CISOs and the IT security guys are being, perceived as the bad guys, as the, that's the cop. He would close everything. And it took some time, but I think that a lot of them, they don't want to be the bad guys. They want to actually being the, the advisors of the business guys, of the business process designers, to say how I can enable you to do what you need to do, but still be, in that scope of either, security regulation or security mindset. So one of the things that we're telling them, try to find a business enabler technology, try to find a technology that first allow the business to run, and all the edge cases, like I mentioned. A lot of our customers, when they come to us, say, a lot of documents being stopped and the IT team is being overwhelmed with quarantine emails or files that are being blocked, but they, because of a policy, but there are few guys in that department that always ask for releasing those documents from them. And we help them, to solve that problem, because if we always deliver the known good content, the user can always work. And of course, if they want something in the original file, they can always fetch it. We allow that. You can always fetch the original because we're delivering replicas, obviously.
Yeah.
But the tension between productivity and security, this is something that I've seen exist, for years. Even when at the beginning of the show, when I mentioned how I came up with that idea, when I was sending that weaponized resume to the recruiting department, I knew that in order for them to do their job, they need to screen hundreds of resumes a week. They need to be productive. So even today, with the security awareness campaigns and phishing, courses, we're telling the employees, you need to spot the phishing. And to be honest, if someone would send me, an email with the, that looks like it came from our, accounting or finance department, say, hey, there was a problem wiring your paycheck, please fill in the attached form, probably I would open it because I want to get my paycheck, right? So I think that tension between security and productivity, this needs to be carefully solved. And I would love to see more products and more services like CDR. Obviously, we're not the only one in the market. Votiro is one of the players, but I would love to see more offering, maybe in some other areas of security and technology that will be solving that tension.
Yeah, seems like it's a very specific. If I'm getting files from outside the company, I know with as a startup, we've done most of our files are transferred, and I'd say that's the alternative we use to that, through a share file or some kind of a OneDrive, where everybody that is safely transferring files, all my people, I'm expecting to have files come through that, and I expect that they don't email files back and forth, and just kind of almost gone by the wayside of attaching files to emails. But like you said, with those files that are brought in from outside the company, those companies need a solution. So, anybody kind of in that aspect that's looking to get a hold of you, tell us how they would get a hold of you, how they would use your products, who you would like to work with as customers, and whatnot.
So first, any company, a small company or mid-sized company that receiving documents, and we see that a lot of companies use that as the lifeblood of their business, are welcome to work with us, with Votiro. Of course, we are API-centric solution. So if you have any business application, if you think about a lot of insurance companies that actually allowing clients to upload documents, they're integrating Votiro-like solution. So we have a solution as a SaaS offering on AWS Cloud, and we also have that for on-prem for the larger customers, larger enterprises. We do offer a native integration for Office 365, for web downloads, also for Box, and soon also Slack. So we see a lot of variety. No matter where the file is coming from, we can help you to get the content in securely and allow the business to run. In terms of how to get all of us, of course, you can reach out through our website, and we're happy to assist you. And of course, you can. I'm always happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, and love to get feedback and direct feedback from the field, from the actual market, from the actual guys that really need our technology and our solution. And of course, even if it's not directly related to Votiro and what we currently offer, I would love to hear feedback.
And your site is?
So our site is votiro.com, Votiro.com. And of course, as I mentioned, we offer a solution as an API flavor as a cloud service, and we also have native integrations with a variety of content pipes.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining today, Aviv, and would definitely appreciate this. And it's a show that I was interested in, and I learned a lot myself. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Chris, for inviting me. And of course, thank you very much for the audience and listeners, and have a great week.
Thanks.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of NewCyberFrontier. Remember to get involved. Often we think that someone else will handle privacy and security in the virtual world, but you are the only one truly in command of your virtual fate. Join our mailing list so we can keep you informed of breaking news and new releases. If you have an idea, if you have a question that you would like to hear answered, or if you want to get involved with our efforts, reach out to us at NewCyberFrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors' links, as they are the ones that really make this show possible. I want to thank each of you for supporting the show, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next episode of NewCyberFrontier.